This is the Lunatics and Legends podcast, and this is Eddie's origin story. Eddie, where are you from?
I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. I have a pretty interesting life. I grew up in organized crime. My dad belonged to a 1% outlaw motorcycle club, and he skin patch retired, and my mom stayed affiliated, and then just kind of grew up in that lifestyle, being around it. Dad went on to be a pretty world famous gunsmith, and that was also super interesting. I was just a lost cause as a youth, just drugs and booze and whatever I wanted. And high school dropout just did not fit into my schedule with attempting to find my next meal and next floor to sleep on, as I was homeless. And at 17, I dropped out, and I actually got into like cleaning carpets here in the valley, as weird as that sounds. And after a while, I just decided I wanted to join the military. And being that I very much grew up just this little punk rock anarchist, a lot of my friends were blown away at the fact that I signed up to join. I was in the Air Force and saw some time in Iraq. Was medically retired after 4 years due to PTSD, and ended up getting out, going to college, and having a crazy life ever since then. I became an entrepreneur. I own a body armor company, and done a lot in the world of personal development, and decided to do a course where I met you, and we decided to start a podcast to help men that might be struggling, or help men to kind of refine their edge and become sharper and more successful.
Let's go ahead and rewind a whole bunch of that. You said your father was part of, I'm sorry, what 1%? I don't know. Fill me in.
Sure.
Help the viewers and myself understand what was going on in that space and how you were existing in that space, because it sounds like it was a fairly volatile space to exist in.
Yeah. So the term 1% comes from an old Easy Rider article where they were attempting to make motorcycle riders not seem so scary. And they said that basically 99% of people who ride motorcycles are actually just law-abiding citizens, but it's the 1% that are outlaw motorcycle riders. And so when you see somebody in a club that has a 1% patch on their vest, then that means that they belong to an outlaw motorcycle club. They are nefarious individuals.
All right.
So my dad was in a motorcycle club here in Arizona, and they ended up patching over to a much larger global club in 1997. And anybody who wants to Google that, I'm sure, can figure out who I'm talking about.
Copy.
But basically, my father was in the Dirty Dozen, and then they ended up patching over to the Hells Angels in 1997. My dad had gotten out by then. He was in from I think it was 79 to 89, and retired out, and went on to, like I said, become a gunsmith. And so as far as the volatile situations, yes, absolutely. I mean, I grew up in a very interesting life, and I mean, I witnessed my first murder, which actually wasn't involved with any of the motorcycle clubs, but I witnessed my first murder at 8 years old, just being in the neighborhood that I grew up in as well. I mean, you know, Maryville is not known for being a very kind area in Arizona. And so, yeah, I mean, I grew up in a crazy neighborhood and with crazy people, and ended up living in Flagstaff for a while. And then the house that we had, my mom moved in with her boyfriend and left me to live in the house by myself when I think I was like 15 or something like that. And then she ended up getting a house and asked me to move back in with her. And then the house that we left actually became, as oxymoronic as it sounds, the Nomad Clubhouse in Flagstaff. So we actually passed the house on to a member, and he ended up actually buying the house and turning it into a kind of clubhouse for the Nomad chapter in Hells Angels in Arizona.
How did you go from that lifestyle into the military? Like what was the transition? You said earlier, like, hey, this is not something that anyone expected me to do. What was the U-turn?
Well, it's funny. So like I said, I became a carpet cleaner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at, I think 18 through like 22, I was cleaning carpets, and there was a ton of money in that. Like I was making a ridiculous amount of money. We're talking circa 2005. I'm pulling in probably almost $2,000 a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 20 something years old, like 21, 22 years old. And I was doing really well for myself. I had whatever I wanted. And I was just driving home one day, and I would, the concept of like the legacy that you leave behind, and like how important your existence on the earth was really hitting me that day. And at the time I felt that there was no more honorable way to die than to die by serving your country. And so, believe it or not, originally, I was going to join the Marine Corps because I had, something to prove, and I was going to go be a Marine. And I had a friend who was in the Marines at the time, and he was like, oh, you should come with me back to Pendleton. And I went out there on like a Saturday night, and I drank all night with the Marines out there, and we were just wasted. And I told them, yeah, guys, I'm going to join the Marines. And they were all just like, don't do it, man. Join the Air Force. Like, it's such a better life. And, I believed them. And so I was like, well, that's coming straight from the horse's mouth. No, I'll join the Air Force. So I ended up joining the Air Force and came to quickly realize that the grass is always greener on the other side because it's well manicured with bullshit. The Air Force was super political. If you weren't one of the good old boys, like, you were not liked very well. And I was not. I worked my ass off. I did a large majority of the jobs that were in my shop on my shift, while, guys were just sitting around literally watching TV. I wanted to work. I wanted to not think about everything that was going on. I just wanted to focus on the job, get the shit done, get it moved out, and, get to go home. So yeah, I kind of went off on a tangent there. However, no, I was making a lot of money as a carpet cleaner, and just decided that I wasn't living a fulfilling life, and decided that I was going to join the military. I remember calling my dad that day, and this was post 9/11. And, I just told him, hey man, I want to go join the military. I'm, tired of just cleaning carpets. I want to do more with my life. And, they got 2 deployments out of me. I got a pretty decent little DD-214 awards and decks, and, so it shows. However, yeah, it was medically retired in 2011, used the GI Bill, and went to college. Got a degree that I never used. Fantastic.
Outstanding. So you joined the Air Force because a bunch of Marines said that it would be a better choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I fell for that one.
How drunk were you?
Yes.
Copy.
Yeah. I will say that night we opened one of those Heineken mini kegs with a K-bar.
Mm-hmm.
If that answers anything. We ran out of beer, and that was all that was left.
Oh, yuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heineken. Ouch.
Yeah. Skunk.
When we were young.
Right. Well, and I grew up on that stuff too, because one of my buddies who, when I was homeless, he let me sleep on his floor. I ended up living with him for a while until his mom got sick and passed away, and the family asked me to move out. However, his dad worked for Amstel and Heineken, and so we'd go over to their apartment in Tempe and just get wasted off of Amstel and Heineken for free as like little 18, 19-year-old kids, you know, going down to the pool with like ice chests filled with tall boys.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. When I was in my 20s doing music in LA, like it was all Jägermeister all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I just would never even consider that now. But yeah, it was nonstop.
Oh, yeah. No, I had many of Yanger moments.
Time in the military. You said you were deployed twice. You want to talk about that, or you want to move on?
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Let's talk about that, because to me, that's pretty interesting. I didn't serve time in the military, so yeah.
Serving time. That's weird that it would both correlate prison and the military.
I thought you might enjoy that. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Both hanging out in yards covered in barbed wire. No, I 2009 through 2010, or not through 2010, into 2010, I was at Joint Base Balad in Iraq. Just out there genning sorties, working on C-130s and 16s and some other stuff that doesn't exist. And it was an experience. I was at a base that they aptly named Mortar because we were getting hit all the time. And I'm pretty sure this is not classified information at this point. However, when we were being briefed before we shipped out, they were telling us that we were actually getting hit at that base 3 times as much as they were at Kandahar in Afghanistan. So it was a lively experience. And we flew commercial to a hub, you know, that I'll leave out. But we flew commercial to a hub and then hopped on actual military plane and flew that into Iraq. And same on the way out, a little quick touchdown in Baghdad, and then flew back to that hub after my deployment on the way out. And on the second trip, we flew commercial all the way. Got to our second deployment. Or I'm sorry, not Oslo. Yeah. Well, I said the name of the hub. Anyway, whoops. On my second deployment, I ended up flying into Kuwait. We flew commercial, and it was the worst experience of my life. That was right when all the volcanoes had gone off. I think in like immersion. There was all this soot in the air, and they kept delaying our flight. And so I got to spend a week like hanging out in this like officers building, and it was amazing. But we ended up flying in the plane. They kept us waiting to load the plane for like 13 hours. Then they finally get us on the plane, and we flew to the Canary Islands, and they would not let us off the plane because we were in uniform. And the Spanish didn't want to seem as though they supported the mission. So they said, we're allowed to be parked there, but we weren't allowed to get off the plane. And we spent like 6.5 hours on the tarmac in a plane with no air conditioning, because you're not running the plane, in the middle of summer, like waiting to take off. And so after, like, you know, drinking a ton of NyQuil to like sleep through the flight, wake up, and we're flying through Saudi Arabia, and apparently the pilot didn't get permission to fly through Saudi Arabia. So all of a sudden on the tracker, you just see the plane turning around and going back the same direction. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, so not including the like 13 hours that we were hanging out waiting to board the plane, it ended up being, I think, like a 27-hour long flight. And I spilled a chew spitter in my lap in the seat because the NyQuil kicked in. And so I had probably a solid, I don't know, 15 hours of chew spit on my crotch. It was a rough one.
That was on your way to your first deployment?
No, second deployment. The one in
Okay.
Kuwait. And the base that I was at there was Ali Aslim, and that was the base that actually got overran by the Iraqis in like 10 minutes. back in the 90s, and the Iraqis basically just came in and just took out the entire base. And really dark energy there. You can tell that there's just some nasty stuff hanging out there. And we were probably about 2,000 yards away from this big building, 3-story building, and it's all just concrete walls. And there's all these holes in the walls. And apparently it's because the Iraqis ended up lining up the people who were still alive in the Kuwaiti military up against that wall and went full auto on them with the AKs. And, you know, a lot of the people in the Middle East are smaller folks because, you know, malnutrition and stuff like that. They're typically around like 5'6" and, you know, maybe 110 pounds, something like that. And they're holding on to these AKs, and the bullets are going all the way up.
The wall.
And then as you're facing that wall, to your left-hand side behind you is a big flagpole. And, you know, the legend had it that after they overtook the base, they took the base commander and it was a very, very, very dark place. Lot of nasty energy in that area, and you can just tell that there's things still lingering. I don't know if, you know, the viewer listening believes in anything afterlife, but I can tell you right now, it's thick. You can cut it with a knife. It is thick, negative space there.
Can I ask you a more personal question about that?
Sure.
How much of that did you carry home with you?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. That's crazy that you would ask that. I actually feel like something attached itself to me. Like if we're going to go into the woo-woo.
Sure.
So at the time I was studying a lot of the occult, just, you know, boredom. And everything that I was hearing about was, you know, these musicians, these actors, all that, were reading this one book, and I'm not going to name the book again. However, it was written by a very well-known Satanist, and it was supposedly how you would sell your soul. Right. And so I'm like, oh, I'm going to read that book. Personally, I'm a Christian, quite, you know, solid in my faith, and I'll be fine. So I order the book on Amazon, and it shows up on Friday the 13th. And I didn't think anything of it, you know. I get the book, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to read this book. And one of my supervisors, I almost named him. One of my supervisors ended up coming out, and he's like, hey, man, don't read that book. And I was like, dude, stop. I'm fine. And he's like, no, man, I'm warning you. Like, don't read that book. And there was a surreal moment. I don't want to get into explaining all of it. However, there was a surreal moment where he asked me a question, and it tripped me out. And like, I was like, oh, out of body experience. Right. So I'm reading this book, at the smoke pit, and then we get called, hey, your shift's up. We're going to run back up to the barracks. And so I hop in the back of the truck, and I'm reading the book, and I just start getting super nauseous. Right. We get up to the barracks. I go into my barracks, and you get changed out because you always have to be in uniform. I'm in my ABUs, my camo, whatever, right? And I changed into my PT gear, and if you're going to leave the barracks, you have to be in some type of uniform, right? So I changed into my PT gear, and that sergeant knocks on my door, and he's like, hey, come out and have a smoke with me. And I'm like, all right, man, and I bring the book with me. And at the time I smoked, right? And I go out there, I'm having a cigarette. And he's like, dude, I'm telling you, don't read that book. Like, you don't understand. My dad was in black magic. Like, there's two things that you could be doing. One, you could be opening up something that you don't know that you're opening up. And two, you could be opening up something that you don't know how to close. And I'm like, dude, you got to chill, man. Like, I'm a faithful Christian. I am good, dude. And he's like, yeah, but you don't understand how strong the forces are that you're messing with. And in my head, I just went, God, if you don't want me to read this book, please give me a sign. And I open up the book. Now, we're in pause right there, right? the founder of my religion is a woman named Mary Baker Eddy. I'm a Christian Scientist for most intents and purposes, right? She spells her last name Eddy. I spell my first name Eddie. However, when I sign it with a Y because my grandma was a Christian Scientist. And when I was learning cursive, she taught me. And so she taught me to sign my name with a Y, right? So all that being said, I open up the book, boom, there's my name, Eddy. And I go, whoa, big guy. It sounds like you're trying to give me a sign. I begin at the beginning of the paragraph and it says, Mary Baker Eddy is a mental prostitute and those lambs who follow her deserve to be slaughtered. And I was like, okay, I'm done here. And I tore the book into thousands of pieces and dispersed it in multiple trash cans. Did not finish reading that book. However, I am a firm believer that when you play with dark things, you will end up with dark results. And things, you're opening up the ability for things to attach themselves to you. And so I steer clear of that. I don't like watching satanic horror movies and stuff like that. Like I don't mess with Ouija boards. I don't play with any of those games because it's so much more powerful than you could realize. So yes, some dark stuff came back with me after that deployment. And I ended up having a breakdown when I got back. And that was what led to my retirement, was having a mental breakdown when I came back.
So when you came home, you said you had a breakdown. How did you bounce back from that? Why are you here right now?
Well, I actually spent some time up in Flagstaff when I first got back, and I was helping my mom build a company that she wanted to start. And, I was there in the winter, and I actually used to just drive out into the woods, snow or not. Like I knew those woods like the back of my hand, and I just drive out there by myself, sit on my truck, smoke cigarettes, and, hang out with my pistol and decide if that was the day. Luckily I, never punched my card. However, definitely thoughts there. Ended up actually getting into personal development, as I often tout. I was in a relationship that I wasn't ready to be in, because I just wasn't a refined person. And somebody saw me struggling in that relationship and asked me to, go join them for this men's meeting. And I went and did this men's meeting and, ended up taking the course and then did the follow-up course and kind of distanced myself from them. And then somebody ended up from that course inviting me to go do a course with Psy Seminars, and ended up doing that. And that kind of was the big difference for me, PSI, and I've continued on to do other courses with them and, go to workshops and do a lot of introspection, and really took on myself. And, there's been a reoccurring theme in my life about fighting off demons. And I actually didn't even realize it until it had already happened, but I actually have 2 different tattoos that talk about fighting off demons. And, one of them's on my arm. But yeah, there was a lot of that, having to sort out mental demons and having to sort out, all of these programs that I had that I didn't realize that I had, and hating myself, and thus in turn not believing anyone when they told me that they loved me. And that's not a place to live, right? And then, as I've said before, even on the podcast, there was a moment when I finally accepted that I was deserving of love, and I just broke down crying. And there's actually a picture of it out there. So, all of the things that I went through ended up bringing me to a place of deciding to take on myself, and being able to survive the crazy experience that has been my life has led me to not be scared to take on crazier things. Getting into ventures like, you've worked with me on a venture that we're working on right now, and I'm just like, okay, nut up or shut up. Like, it's time to go. and, you know, beaten down, tired, sick, whatever, I don't stop. Like I have to hit my goals. I have to chase it down. And I think that kind of tenacity can happen when somebody survives things they shouldn't have survived, and then also unpacks that and finally learns to love themselves, and then ends up deciding that there's no other way but to win.
Sure. A newfound lust for life.
I want to win at life.